Good morning and welcome to the BDTV Breakfast Show. This is the big story, and we are joined this morning by Dr. Ruth Karachi Benson. Today we're speaking on Nigeria's 2025 WASE results, which have crashed to a 10-year low. Only 38.32% of students obtaining 5 credits, including English and mathematics, compared with 72.12% last year. Almost 2 million candidates sat for the exam, yet just 754,545 met the minimum benchmark. Well, this is not just a bad year, it's the clearest evidence yet that Nigeria's education system is in decline, and the consequences, if left unchecked, will shape the nation's future for decades to come. Today, we're joined by Dr. Ruth Karachi Benson Oji. She is the Associate Professor at Pan Atlantic University, and she tells us what this stable shaking result is telling us and where the hard work of fixing it must begin. Good morning and welcome to the show, Dr. Ruth.
It's my pleasure to be here.
Thank you very much for joining this morning. Let me start by asking you this question. When you first saw this year's numbers, what crossed your mind? Do you think this is a one-off dip or evidence of a deeper rot in the educational system?
Absolutely, I'll go with the latter. And I think that it's about time for us to begin to bring all of the perpetrators of this to question. And by that, I mean that we should be progressing, but what we're rather seeing is a steady decline. Yes, there seems to have been a bit of improvement over the years, but with this one, especially considering what the examination body did to try to stem the tide of malpractice and cheating, then it's very clear that something is amiss in the system.
Right, and what would you say could be this single biggest driver of this sudden decline that we're seeing? I mean, according to the WAEC, which is the body which conducts these examinations, they had said that, you know, because of the new format which they decided to devise this time around, so students were not able to cheat. But some people would say maybe students these days are a little bit distracted. Some were also tied to perhaps not no good remuneration for teachers, for lecturers. So what would you say is the reason for this sudden decline?
Well, I wouldn't think that there is just one singular thing responsible for this kind of results that we saw. It's actually a complex interplay of several factors, ranging from all of the things that you've mentioned to the school system, the school educational system, and what they've put in place. So take, for example, the institutions themselves that organize cheating. I mean, that's a big one. When institutions demand of their students money in order to sort out supervisors and what have you, what does that tell the students? That they don't need to study, they don't need to prepare for exams because they're very much certain that they're going to pass their exams in flying colors. And so that's one. Anybody faulting what the examination body has done in terms of serializing the questions really has a lot of questions to answer, because I think that that's a step in the right direction. They were more or less taken unawares, and this is good for the exams generally. So there we have it, schools supporting students to cheat. And there we also have parents. And maybe this is not talked about so much. A lot of parents actually connive with school authorities to make sure that their students come out in flying colors. And I'm wondering why any sane parent would be doing that, because they're actually destroying their kids. So when kids know that their parents would go and pay money for them to pass their exams, why would they want to study? Why would they want to prepare? So that's a very big bottleneck. You have schools where parents come together and they're contributing funds to make sure that their children pass. And then who are these people in the school? Yes, maybe poor remuneration, and that again brings the government into question. Why aren't you remunerating your teachers enough? So why would teachers be interested in whatever tokens they're given? Maybe they're not even tokens, maybe they're good enough, juicy, and why would they resist them? All right, so from an ethical point of view, nobody is considering all of these things. Teachers feel that they are justified. Some teachers feel they're justified in accepting all of these kinds of monies just because they want to improve their standard of living. And then parents feel justified because, oh, well, I don't want to be in a parent meeting or forum and then say my child didn't do well. So the issues are there, and we have to begin to talk about them and find solutions to them.
Right. And we often talk about funding and infrastructure. How much of this problem is actually about the quality of teaching in itself?
Well, two sides to it. There are cases where people don't have the right infrastructure in certain schools. They keep complaining about not having the right infrastructure. So take, for example, no language labs in many cases. So how are they going to learn some topics in English language, for example? How are they going to practice what they're teaching in chemistry, physics, biology, when they do not have this infrastructure? Now that's on the one side. And that, again, says that the government has a lot to do in this regard. Maybe they are trying, but what we are seeing shows that they need to do more. Secondly, on the part of the kind of people employed to teach, well, we've heard it said that people come into the teaching profession simply because they think that they have no other job to do. With that kind of mindset, there's just no way that these people could impact. But we do have people who are there for what it's worth. They are real teachers. But again, do we have people who aren't qualified, who are teaching students? Absolutely. So maybe a screening has to be done now. Maybe people have to be employed intentionally based on the merits of the profession, that they do have this qualification. Because again, these are the things that could contribute. You go to some of these so-called private schools and you see teachers who just have the school certificates. Their school sets, that's all. Now, what kind of learning would they impart to these students? Some would be teaching things that they do not know. And to my mind, this is actually where the foundational issues begin. So the students do not have the right foundation because the person teaching them isn't qualified and maybe isn't passionate about the job they're doing. So these are real issues.
And in this case, who then bears most of the responsibility in this case? Will it be the government? Will it be the teachers? Will it be the parents? Will it be the examination bodies? Which of them bears the most responsibility?
Well, if we're talking about employment of teachers, we know where that rests. If it's the government schools, they need to do more in terms of getting on board people who are really qualified and passionate about doing the teaching work, right? Then in terms of the examination malpractice, I think everybody needs to speak to themselves. So for example, my child is going to eventually go study medicine, and I'm interested as a parent to sort them out, right from primary school. I mean, this has eaten deep into the fabric of our nation. When students at the primary school level are being sorted out, they go for their common entrance examinations and answers are being called out for them to write. What are we doing? Both the parents who contributed money to give to the school authorities who perpetuate these acts should be called to book. I mean, everybody needs to sit up. We aren't helping these children. Now people make a joke about you going to the hospital and a doctor would ask AI what he should tell you. But are we getting the point? It's to say that they haven't really learned. While I would say categorically that there are those who are good at what they do, let's not dismiss this massive number of people who are not being helped. Maybe the children aren't really the problem. Maybe if measures were put in stricter proportions, they would sit up and study. Maybe if parents stopped enabling their children, and maybe if school authorities stopped enabling them and find sources of funding from other means, get to talk with the government. We're not remunerated well. What should be done? How can we make better propositions? Train the teachers. I mean, there are a lot of things that we've been talking about, and it's now time for action. In many spaces, people were mentioning all of these things. Now it's about time we sat back, put the cards on the table and begin to say, hey, all of us at these different quarters, what are we supposed to do? And then maybe have accountability mechanisms put in place to check that everybody is doing what they ought to do.
And speaking of action, if we were to take serious action today, how long are we going to, before we start seeing improvement? How long do you think it could take?
Well, it's really mind-blowing, I think, because this issue of cheating, malpractice, corruption, bribery, I think has eaten so deep into the fabric of the educational system. And I like that certain things have started being done, especially by the examination body WAEC. And well, it might take some time, I think. And that's because you have to just start at every single level and quarter. And so from the primary school to the secondary schools, I mean, they do need to do intentional things, starting with changing the orientation and the mindset of these people who have to tutor the children. They have to be the ones who are committed to helping these children become the better version of themselves. And then for all of the reasons that they give for engaging in unethical practices, begin to say, okay, what's the way out? And then the government should be interested. Let the Nigerian government look into the educational system in terms of what the welfare of teachers generally are. In so many other climes, I don't want to name them, people are respected as teachers. But here in Nigeria, even up until the tertiary level, teachers, lecturers are struggling. And why is that the case? That's because it seems nobody really cares about their welfare. But if people are happy on the job, then they'll put in their best. I'm not saying that that's an excuse for them to get involved in underhanded, unethical things. No. My team and I once conducted a research with over 100 teachers somewhere in Lagos, and the same thing kept coming, the same story of lack of proper remuneration, lack of care and all. Until when? This is the same talk. When the budgets are being prepared, what portion of it is allocated for the education industry or sector? These are key questions that are begging for answers. And until, as a nation, we take education in Nigeria seriously, we'll continue to have issues like this. Because people want to be comfortable. And if you do make them comfortable, then maybe they will do the best that they can.
Right. And there've been conversations about, completely eradicating maybe these examinations. Perhaps they are not as useful as we think they are. I don't know your thoughts on this.
Okay. Well, I don't think they should be eliminated. I mean, the fact that they're happening is the reason we're seeing this decadence, right? So we need some kind of checkers in place. We need to know that certain things are happening in the educational system. Otherwise, when they, for example, yank off this kind of educational body or exams, how do we then know that we're doing what we're supposed to do? I do think it's important for students to have a certain kind of assessment. If the people who are proposing to stop the exams can come up with better alternatives, then we're up for listening to them, because no, we cannot scrap it when there are no alternatives in place. And this isn't just a Nigerian thing, it's a West African thing. And I mean, all of West Africa can be wrong in saying that this is what to do. Perhaps we just have to continue to improve the processes and make sure that students are really helped well enough for them to compete and do well in their exams, I think.
Right. And are you hopeful? I mean, we're wrapping up on the conversation now. So are you hopeful about the future of education in this country, or are you having some sort of worry?
I am worried. I am worried. But again, is there hope? Yes. If all parties involved can be truthful to themselves and can be willing to bring about a change, then the change will happen. I know that the times we live in now are very much dicey, quite a lot of things not going well on the global scale. But in our own little corners, we can try the best we can. And until we have that personal resolve at the individual schools, even with the educational bodies. So, for example, who leaks the papers, right? Who's taking them out, and then on the morning of the exam, people have access to them and then begin to solve them and then send to the students. I mean, what accountability measures can be put in place? Can they track that these things do not happen? I mean, there are many 1,001 things, and that's why many of us are interested in matters like this, because we want to see today that we are having the right conversations, and beyond just talking about this is that we are acting. So maybe the government wants to engage consultants like us and other people out there who can sit and say, let's try this ABC. And when we start implementing the measures put in place, hopefully we can see a better tomorrow.
Right. One more thing before you go. I was going to ask this question. The reports show that one of the subjects which students failed woefully at were mathematics and English. Why would you say that happened?
Well, several factors. I mean, if students aren't well taught, then there's just no way they can do well. You have many cases you hear of a whole secondary school, for example, not having more than one math or English teacher. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. How can this particular teacher be efficient? How can they teach? So even if there are two of them for a whole secondary school, I mean, who's kidding who? It's high time the government became interested in assessing the things that are happening in the individual schools and make sure that they're getting feedback. Maybe they don't get feedback enough. Maybe they're just seated somewhere and then who's government? The people, right? Go there and see what's happening. Maybe people aren't giving the real reports. And so when students aren't taught well, definitely they can't perform well. And that's just it. And then the students on their own part, I mean, there are students who, despite the negative situations around them, they'll pull through. Yeah, so that's why I said there needs to be a lot of reorientation on the part of students telling themselves, I want to be the better version of myself. I think they need a lot of this life skills talk, in schools. So they know that regardless of what you see here, you are the anchor of your future. So you need to tell yourself that you want to be good. And maybe from there, they can do more in terms of having tutorials and stuff like that.
All right. And any final words for us this morning?
Yeah, it's a wake-up call. I really do hope that this 38.2 pass rate, percentage of the pass rate can make everybody wake up. Key stakeholders, players in the education field need to all get up and say, now we're going to have this retreat and we're going to see what the way forward is. We need to begin to have a reorientation that would see us pushing through to the desired goal. Otherwise, this will be all talk, and maybe another time we're here talking about this again without any action. So let's begin to act right now.
Very much, Dr. Ruth Karachi Benson Oji, Associate Professor at Pan Atlantic University. Thank you very much for joining us on Big Story this morning.
It's my pleasure. Thank you.
Well, this has been the Big Story right here on the BDTV Breakfast Show. Up next is Social Listening. Do stay with us.